Welcome to The Behaviorist with Work Wisdom, where we help you adopt high-performance mindsets, behaviors, communication, and culture. I'm your host, Sarah Colantonio. Our intention for the Behaviorist podcast is to share accessible, concrete practices that you can weave into your whole life to begin a shift toward joy and meaningful achievement. Today, we're turning our focus on equitable work, and we're grateful to have Donunshae Sanders from Work Wisdom joining us. And so Donunshae, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you and I present an equitable work workshop from time to time. And so I'm thankful for you coming in to have this conversation. So I want to start with a kind of a personal question. Why are you so interested in this subject and in the topic of equity in the workplace?
Well, for me, sadly, it comes from a place of hurt and a little bit of pain. Mm-hmm. So, fresh out of college, my first opportunity in this professional workplace for my career. And, I had a lot of high hopes and dreams that I was hoping to achieve at this organization. And sadly was met with a lot of issues with management, employees, as far as me being able to share my opinions and my views on things. Oh. So a lot of, the struggle that I had was seeing things that weren't necessarily working properly, whether it was policies or procedures or employees not being treated fairly. And so me actually going to upper management and saying, hey, these things aren't right. What is it that we can do to change these so that everyone feels like they're included, everyone feels as though their voice is heard? And it was not... I'd say it was not appreciated. Yeah. And at times I definitely felt ostracized and judged by sharing my opinion. So, it definitely, after separating from the company, it definitely gave me a different perspective and pushed me to look a lot more into equity and saying, what are things that we can do personally to enforce equity and to make people care?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there is a lot of interest in this topic, especially after the incident at Starbucks.
Yes.
It's not like equity or inequity is this new thing that
definitely
we need to dive into. I always think about the story that we start with in our workshop when we talk about the curtain story, yes. Where we, back in the 1970s, it was so common in symphonies that there was basically only men were in these symphonies, and in the 1970s it was like after the feminist movement, the women's movement, and women were like, what's going on here?
Right.
There were women musicians. And so in order to create equity and see who's actually going to be hired for these positions in symphonies, they put up a curtain so that if you were going to try out for the symphony, the conductor could not see who was trying out. So it didn't matter if you had, punk hair or whatever, if you were a man or a woman, you would just be basically judged on your performance. And so I think, the notion that there's these ways to even the playing field, I think is such a relief, because in our research, we've learned so much about how having equity has all these massive benefits. And so, if it means alleviating pain, like a lot of times it comes out of pain, right?
Sure.
It comes out of this recognition of this is painful. I'm in an organization, my voice isn't being heard. And so then you feel shut down. Mm-hmm. And it can range from, horrible abuse and sexual harassment, or racism, to just those little things like your idea being ignored in a meeting that still can cut really deep. So I think that makes this such an important topic. So let me clarify for listeners too. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we're talking about equitable work?
Sure. So at least personally, equitable work is, a place where people feel included, people are treated fairly, and their voices can be heard without judgment or being ridiculed. And it's a safe place for everyone, regarding policies, procedures, and just, opinions shared on topics. Everyone is able to have an equal, well, not necessarily equal, but everyone is able to have a piece of the pie.
Yeah. So one of the things, I have this quote in front of me. It's the definition of equity, and we often share this definition with others. Equity is just and fair inclusion. An equitable society is one in which all can participate and prosper. The goals of equity must be to create conditions that allow all to reach their full potential. In short, equity creates a path from hope to change. I think I love that positivity. Going off of that definition, how is equity different than equality? I think this is something that sort of confuses people sometimes, and definitely did me in the past.
Same.
How do you look at that differently? Equity, equality.
So, and that's why I had to apologize from when I said, it being equal. So from my perspective, equality is everyone is given the same chances for things, no matter where their starting place is. So, whether, someone has more money or whether someone has less money, whatever the case may be, like, equality is giving everyone the same amount of something, regardless of their starting point. And for me, equity is giving each person what it is that they need to be successful in their work.
Yeah. So like the idea that if, one person has gone to all the right schools, for example, and been mentored throughout their, high school and college years, and they get into a position in a successful company, they might not struggle so much to have success in that company, whereas somebody that maybe went to like a state school or
True.
they didn't have, their parents weren't constantly helping them and encouraging them, and maybe they didn't have a teacher that was like, this is going to be helpful for you.
Sure.
So maybe they need like extra mentorship or guidance. That would create, in my head, I kind of picture that would create more equity.
Definitely.
If that person is a coworker of the other one, they have a better chance at both being successful.
Sure.
So why is it helpful to build for workplaces to build equitable practices? I always feel like this is kind of a softball question, but sometimes people need to recognize why is this good, besides the fact that it's the right thing to do.
Well, I'm going to say three things.
Okay.
Retention, profitability, and morale.
Okay.
I know personally, if I am at a workplace where I feel as though my voice is heard, I'm included in the conversation, and that my views are appreciated, of course I'm going to stay there longer. Right. I have no problem, punching the clock and pushing in those extra hours if I'm feeling as though the things that I'm doing are making an impact and the people that I'm doing it for are appreciating the work that I'm doing. Yeah. And then as far as profitability, it makes you more money. When you've got people working at your organization that are happy to do the work that they're doing and they feel like they're being appreciated and that their opinions are valued, they're definitely going to come in and do a bomb job. And it's going to continuously make you money. And then also, having a diverse environment of people and having this inclusive environment, you're getting so many different perspectives and you're getting so many different opinions on things. And I think that it just is allowing your business to continue to grow in the right direction. And then morale. People are happier when you're able to come in and, be yourself and feel as though you're not judged for being different or for, saying, hey, this policy does not apply to everyone, or this is unacceptable. Yeah. It just makes you happy. It makes you feel good to be there.
Absolutely. So are there any concrete practices for improving self-awareness regarding unconscious bias? I know the answer to this.
Sure. So the IET, which is the Implicit Association Test, it is an assessment that measures your implicit or unconscious biases. So, for example, if you have an unconscious bias to disabled people or people of color, it's going to measure and show you which group or which public it is that you're a little bit more sensitive to.
Yeah, so it's really growing in self-awareness, right?
Yes.
This test, which it's free, Harvard started it, and you can go online. And I think you and I have both taken it. Yes. I haven't taken the full thing. I've taken some of the portions, but it is really illuminating, and it's also really humbling. I think that for me personally, I wouldn't necessarily want to go and share my outcomes with somebody else. But what is helpful, I think, is knowing, okay, we all have these biases. We're always more prone to be accepting of people that we consider more like us. So it's the important thing is to recognize, okay, I have a bias towards, if it's people of color or if it's, somebody in a wheelchair or whatever the range, it was pretty wide.
Yeah.
To recognize, okay, now I know this about myself, and then what am I going to do to mitigate, like in the beginning, talking about that curtain, what curtain am I going to use now that I have this information? Right. So yeah, I think the IET, I think that's a really good example of like how can I grow in self-awareness in this way. Sure. You have to be pretty open-minded about it.
Yes, you do. And self-awareness is the first step to trying to handle this beast.
Yeah. So what are some tools for creating more equity in the workplace? Which one would you recommend for our listeners?
Well, first I'm going to say there's so many.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of the most important is diversity in interviewing. I know me personally, I've been a part of group interviews, and I feel like it's beneficial for, the person that's coming into the organization, just as much for the people who are part of the organization. And so for those who are not, sure as to what group interviewing is, usually what will happen is you'll have a good bit of people from either the management team or that are going to be working with this individual. And it's really great because the individual coming in gets to see that, it's an inclusive environment. Yeah. They're really interested and happy to have so many different perspectives in on this interview process to make sure that you're to make sure that you're a right fit and to make sure that you're going to work well with everyone. But also, I think that it's great for the person that's coming into the organization to be able to say, wow, they've got all of these people that I'm going to be working with that are coming in to see how well it is that we're going to work together if we mesh good. So, diversity in interviewing would be a very big tool that I would recommend to use.
Yeah, I like that one. The other one, I think I mentioned it a little bit early on, is the mentorship.
Sure.
And so having that be just part and parcel of your organization, that the new employees coming in are mentored. So everybody has this chance at success in whatever industry it is. And I just think that's so important. I love the idea of either, they're naturally matched with somebody who's an executive in their field, or however it is that the organization wants to do it, but making sure that they're paired up. I mean, there's so much wisdom that you can gain.
Yes, there
that
is.
If you're not mentored, you're flying blind,
right,
and hoping you make the right choices. And of course, we're going to fail in our attempts sometimes, but to have a mentor in our field, I think that's really key, and making that part of it is such I think a great tool for equity. So if there's one mindset or behavior, communication practice that's helped you personally become more equitable in your work, what would that be?
Asking questions. I know for some people it may seem like a very small step, but it has a very large impact. Myself in particular, a lot of the times if I was, put in a situation, or if there was something going on at a company that I was working for that I felt like, didn't necessarily apply to everyone, or if there were some issues there, going on with employees, whatever the case may be, taking the time to step in and ask, why are we choosing to do it this way? Did we think about these parties? Did we think about this party? I feel like is a great way to start the conversation and create that dialogue. And then it's also a way to be able to share, different opinions and perspectives. And that person may say, you know what? We probably do need to make some changes to this policy because it doesn't apply to everyone, or it's not, the best look for our organization at this time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love that idea of asking questions. The power of that is really big. That's come up in past podcasts too, the simplicity of that, but the power of it. So what advice do you have for our listeners when it comes to being intentional about preventing, managing, transmitting, and transmuting inequity at work? What advice do you have?
I'd say speaking up.
Okay.
Taking the time when you either noticed or seen something or heard, you could be working and seeing an employee treating someone badly due to the color of their skin or because they're a disabled person, whatever the case may be. And so, taking the time to speak up and say, this is wrong. This is not how this should be done. Mm-hmm. And that could be through way of, word of mouth, you going to your CEO, or if they have a board or an individual that's a little bit higher up that'll be able to handle it. Or even, writing an anonymous letter to, like I said, either a board member or someone in your human resources department. But taking the time to let someone know that it's an issue so that it can be corrected is a big part of it.
Yeah. That idea of like bystander training has been so helpful. It's almost like people are more empowered to speak up when they see things, because it's not that they're not seeing it, but it's like they don't know what to say. So scripting that and giving them the concrete words and ways to intervene that's made such a big difference.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Donunshae. I'm really grateful for you being part of this movement of helping world changers in the workplace to enhance their individual and collective team performance. Thank you, listeners, for downloading The Behaviorist. We hope you'll subscribe. Stream our next episode. We're going to dive into influence so we can become more potent and even more powerful versions of ourselves. Please reach out to us through our website, workwisdomllc.com. You can enjoy Work Wisdom press and productions, ask questions and suggestions of topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. Thank you so much for listening.